Hi, everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution. And this is our weekly Sunday reading group. We're not all here, but some of us are here. And today is March 27th, 2022. And we are reading What God Said by Neale Donald Walsch. And I'm going to hand it over to Linda. Linda. You're on mute.
Hi, everybody. So we are reading What God Said by Neale Donald Walsch, and we are on page 122. We're applying the message to everyday life from chapter 11. Okay. Applying this message to everyday life. Never have I found any more powerful, practical, or easy to use tool for spiritual and joyful living than the be, do, have paradigm. It is a spiritual tool because it calls upon the spiritual awareness that resides within each of us and allows us to demonstrate that we are clear about our spiritual identity. There is nothing in life more spiritual than experiencing divinity flowing through you. It is a practical tool because it works on the ground in real life and immediately, not in a week or two or a month or so, but in the very moment the tool is employed. Here are some suggestions on how you might use the be, do, have paradigm in your own day-to-day experience. Choose ahead of time how you want to be in every given circumstance that you know with certainty will repeatedly arise in your life. For instance, if you are a regular traveler, you know for a certainty that eventually on some trip, your flight is going to be delayed. If you're married and your spouse has a tendency to be late for appointments, you know for a certainty that there's going to be another time when your spouse is going to be late for something you really needed him to be on time for. How do you decide to be in these situations? If something occurs in your life that is unexpected, stop for just a moment and ask yourself, how do I want to be with regard to this? Then step into that state of being. This is a creative process rather than a reactive process. Remember, life was designed as a process of creation, not a process of reaction. And what you are being invited by life to do in every golden moment of now is to recreate yourself anew in the next grandest version of the greatest vision you ever held about who you are. And so if you unexpectedly find yourself in a stressful situation, a minor car accident, the loss of your house keys, a friend you never thought would do so lets you down, you can use this as an opportunity to ask yourself in that moment, how do you want to be with regard to what is going on? And then step into that. Make a list of 5 things you wish you had more of in your life right now. These could be physical things or experiences. Then be on the lookout for people who clearly have even less of those things than you seem to. Give these things to them. Do it at once without thinking or calculating or analyzing it. Just give it away. When their face lights up, observe how incredible it feels to notice that you had that to give them. Let that feeling inform your sense of self. Now you might say, okay, I can see how this might be able to work with abundance or love, but how would it work with physical things, like a better place to live? Say that what I really want is a better place to live. How do I manifest that? By giving another person a better place to live. I remember that I had a lady in one of my weekly classes in practical metaphysics that I taught years ago who asked this exact question. We'll call her Sue. Sue and her husband had been living in the same small apartment for years, working hard, both of them saving their money so that they could one day afford the home of their dreams. How can your theory work for me? She wanted to know, and she wasn't too friendly about it. It was her frustration speaking, I knew. Are you willing for it to? I asked. Are you willing for the theory to work? Look, she said, there's no way in the world I could be the source of a better home for someone else. We can't even do that for ourselves. Your little process will not work. Are you willing for it to? I asked her again. She looked me straight in the eye. Okay, I'm willing, but it can't work on something like this. If you say so, I said. What's that supposed to mean? She asked. It means that as you speak it, so will it be done unto you. I love it. More platitudes. You got to love this guy. Sweetheart, I know that you're frustrated with your life. I understand that. But the universe cannot give you what you say it cannot. That's a rule. That's what do they say on the TV show? That's the prime directive. So if you say this process won't work, guess what? It won't work. You're putting too many obstacles in the way. Your energy either creates obstacles or opportunities. You get to choose. Sue became silent for a moment and then, okay, fair enough. My husband says I'm a continual pessimist too, so I'll try to give that up. Terrific. Now, are you willing for this process that I've been talking about to work? Yes, I am. I really want it to. Do you think it can? When I think positively, I suppose it can. Good. The trick is, don't ask how. Just move into willingness. Okay, I've got it. A week later. Now, are you holding on to your hat? Sue came back to the very next class. I'm talking 1 week later, brimming with excitement. She couldn't wait to share with the group. It was Thursday night, I think, she began. I was reading the paper, and it said that volunteers were wanted for a project that was going to be launched last weekend to put a family that had been burned out of their house into a new home in 3 days. There's a group called Habitat for Humanity that does this, and they were putting out a call for volunteers. They said that everyone and anyone was welcome. You go to a building site and they tell you exactly what to do. If you use a hammer or carry a piece of wood or shine a just installed faucet, you can be of help. And I thought, my gosh, this is a way I could give someone else what I want, namely a place to live. So my hubby and I went down there on Saturday. There must have been 100 people there. We put up an entire house in 3 days. And then they came around with a pledge sheet on a clipboard and asked us if we would be willing to donate a small amount each month to pay for materials for Habitat for Humanity projects like this elsewhere. And we said, sure. And so we found a way to be the source of better housing for another right then and there. The group was amazed at the synchronicity, but Sue was nowhere near finished. Wait, there's more, she exclaimed. On Monday night, we got a call from my Uncle George. He said that he'd been offered a big promotion by his company. An important upper management position had suddenly opened up, and the job was across the country. But it was too good to pass up. So he had to move with his family and wondered, what would he do with this 4-bedroom house? He wanted to know if we would house it for him for a few months while he figured it all out, or better yet, if we'd be interested in renting it from him. I told him we could never afford to rent a place like that and still put money aside for a home of our own. He said, what if you rented with an option to buy? I'll give you a good rental rate and every penny will go towards the purchase if you decide you like the house and want to buy it. Plus, I'll carry the paper for you. You don't have to go to the bank to qualify for a mortgage. Your family, and I know you're good for it. Besides, we'd rather have the house go to someone we know and love, not strangers. Sue was now breathless when she said, we move in next month. The class cheered wildly, and the angels sang, and God, well, God just smiled a lot. End of chapter.
Well,
And Linda was overcome with emotion
yes,
while reading the story.
yeah. Does anybody remember like what their first volunteer job was? Or if you didn't, that's fine too.
I mean, my first volunteer gig was tutoring people in reading in the 5th grade because they asked me if I would. Does that count?
Yeah, it does. And didn't it make you feel good?
Yes, it did actually.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think I was 12. I was like a candy striper.
But it did make you feel good too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Doing things for other people always makes me feel
Yes,
good.
yes, yes, yes. Always.
Anybody else? Bree, Mariana, or Ariana?
Hmm.
We can hear you, Ree, but it was real quiet. What did you say?
Yeah, I'm normally on my headphones, but they didn't work.
Oh, there you are.
I started babysitting in church when I was 12. And when I was 16, I volunteered in a charity shop.
Yeah, when I was 15 and 16 and into 17, I also volunteered. I'd go to like mental hospitals and old folks homes and just talk to the people, keep them company, do art projects with them.
Ariana?
Yes, I would like to say I was too much preoccupied to survive in my job all
Mhm.
these years on university, so I had no time. But
Yeah.
I plan, I would like, if I retire, if is this will be okay, that I do some projects or some things for common good. I don't know exactly what, but I would like if I have time.
Well, let me ask you this. And I don't know what it's like in Europe, but do you separate your recyclables, your garbage? Because that's a form of volunteering. Because you don't have, nobody's going to hold a gun to your head. Also, smiling at someone, just to smile, I think is a good place to start. Ema, what about you?
When I grew up, I was from very young age. I was always asked to take care of the small children in the same house and in the environment. I was the best babysitter. So in that way, I was used to do things. And then I have always been involved in projects that has been volunteer projects for building up communities and meditation groups and so where I haven't, I mean, even if I worked also, I have been always been part of some, just say, non-profit project. So, and I remember also when I in summertime worked at hospital, I was studying, and in summertime I had to do some work, and I was working at hospital, and I didn't think they talked and had time for the elderly patients. It was such a place where they were elderly. So when you should just be functional and clean and do this practical thing. But when my time was off, I went around to everyone and talked to them, and they just loved it because no one had time to talk to them. But for me, I couldn't stand that they didn't have one. So I took 1 hour at least, or 2 hours after I stopped my work, and went around to every one of the old patients and talked to them. So I can feel that how important it is from inside. Yeah, that's things that came up for me.
Well, I've done, because I grew up with parents who volunteered religiously, and no pun intended, but they used to, for years, for as long as I can remember, they used to go into nursing homes and say what's called a lay mass. And they would do the mass. They wouldn't consecrate anything because they came with the consecrated communion house. And they took me a couple times, and I thought, God, my parents look like they're really enjoying themselves, you know. It was like, I mean, they really seemed to like it. And I was visiting, so it wasn't something I could take up from, I could have for a couple of years because I still live there. But I think one of my more interesting ones that I really loved doing is I used to go up to the Fort Collins Hospital. And I, at that time, was still going to Mass. And I would take this little gold, not gold, but the color was gold, thing full of communion hosts that had been blessed by the priest. And I would go on all 5 floors and go to the front or the nurse's station and say, do you have any Catholic residents? And they'd tell me who was. And so I would go in there, and I would always have a very enjoyable conversation. And many of these people were elderly. There were some younger people too. But my memory is, but what I was thinking about was this turning out, I thought it ended up to be a funny thing. I walked into this man's room, and what you were supposed to say is, hello, Mr. So-and-so. I'm Nanette Kennedy, and I'm here with communion if you would like to take communion today. And we would always chat a little bit, you know. So that was a good thing. But one day I walked into the room, not his room, another patient's room. And I thought he was talking to me, but he was on the phone. But he had the phone upside down. And I got kind of close to him because I didn't think he heard me. And I realized he was pleasuring himself. And I was like, oh dear, I think I'll come back a little later. You know, but people that are in hospitals love to have somebody visit. And those of you that have done the candy striping or volunteering at hospitals know that. And it does make you feel good. And I just want to mention this other thing I did that I was so terrified, but I did it. There's a trailer court here in Fort Collins. It's on the outskirts of town. And it's all Hispanic people. And it is notorious for crime and other, drugs. And I don't even remember how I came across this, but the woman was telling me that this is what I'd be walking into. And I was supposed to teach them English. I said, well, I don't speak Spanish. And they said, well, that's perfect because you won't speak Spanish and they'll be forced to learn. Like if I say, what is this? I'm holding up a chair. They were supposed to come back in English. And there were several of these people that were looking to get their citizenship. And I was teaching them about getting their citizenship. And the guy I was dating found out where I was volunteering about. He about had a coronary infarction. And I said, they are cool with me. They're glad I'm there. They're willing. They walk me to my car. They greet me at my car. I was never afraid. Anyway, I just think that volunteering, and I volunteer half my time to humanities team. I think it's very good for the self. That's just the point I'm trying to make. Is you're usually, I think maybe one of the reasons you got emotional, Linda, is you're not only helping someone, you're also helping yourself. And especially when that woman was kind of uppity at the beginning of thinking that couldn't possibly work. And she actually got what she was looking for, though that was not her purpose for the volunteering part. So anyway, anybody else want to add or subtract?
I saw someone emailed me for, hey, this organization is looking for volunteers, and I thought about you. And I saw the email this week and I discarded it. I was thinking, nah, I can't do that. I don't have enough energy at the time. And just now, while you were talking, I wrote them an email anyway saying, hey, I'm available if you want me to help. It's an organization to teach refugees Dutch. So I did that in the past. So I'm going to email them right after this session to say that I'm available to do it again.
Good for you. Good for you. And I think everybody here who's done volunteer work can tell you that it's not always easy. But it does give you this sense of being part of society and trying to be part of the change, as we would call it. Well, that was very interesting to hear all these different things, and good for you, Bree. Good for you. Anybody else want to add anything else before we go back to the book? Mary, you look like a smiling little angel. Okay. Well, let's continue then.
Okay.
Just 1 second. I asked to volunteer in humanity team. I don't know, 1 hour, 2 hours in Croatia, but nobody responds me from Croatia because I think that is not active. But my job takes me full time. I must go to retire to have more time, maybe 1 year if I succeed.
Well,
Yeah.
if you can't be a country coordinator, you can be a country contact. which means that you just are like a point person that kind of knows what's going on in humanities team. And if you meet people that are interested, and it would be on our website, your name would be on our website, that you would be the contact for Croatia. I don't know if Croatia is even available. We have 50 countries with country coordinators or contacts. And the contacts are people like you. They don't have a whole lot of time, but they're available if they want some information. And if you don't even have the information, you can email me or Christine Glenn, who's in charge of it. And you can just say, this person wants to know how often we do meditations, or this person wants to know something about the Humanities Stream platform, which is like a spiritual Netflix. And that something really actually cool happened with that over the last few days. Anytime anybody purchases a subscription to this platform, we will give away one. And we started with veterans so that they could have something else to do with their time. And that's the kind of things that might come up for you.
Communication.
Yeah.
I
So
can put connection to this meeting. I joined Humanity Team Croatia. I can put this link. Is that okay?
yeah, good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And let's read a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, chapter 12. It seems to me that life continues to be an unfolding mystery for nearly everyone. There have been and are now true masters living in ongoing peace and harmony, no matter what was or is happening. So we know that reaching such a level of personal and spiritual development is possible. Still, I have seen very few people achieve it in a flash. My observation is that for the most of us, life continues to reveal itself one layer at a time. That certainly has been the case with me. Even my conversations with God took place over a period of years. What I notice is that the world is still full of seekers. Despite all the wisdom that's out there, despite all the data in all the encyclopedias, despite all the spiritual messages in all the sacred books of all the world's religions, despite all the deep insights offered to us by the world philosophies, despite all of it, we still have no idea about many things regarding the life that we're living. So we search for guideposts, we search for insights, we look to each other for suggestions on how to get through all of this, on how to get by, on how to get on. And if we're lucky, we have a relationship, a personal relationship with God. If we're lucky, we have the ability to relate with this source of wisdom that exists in the universe. If we're very fortunate, we're able to interact with this source, to experience it as a friend, to use it as a resource. I've been lucky enough to do that. And so I've been given spiritual roadmaps and many guideposts that have helped me along the way and that have made me more comfortable with myself and with the whole life experience as I move into my seventh decade than I have ever been before. I've had a chance to observe and to remember a great many things, and I've dared myself to put it all together over these most recent 15 years of my life and to create a holistic approach to my day-to-day experience. Putting together the fractured self. We've heard a lot in the past few decades about holistic living, 25 years ago, I was even the managing editor of a weekly newspaper in San Diego called Holistic Living News. The dictionary defines holistic as characterized by comprehension of the parts of something as intimately interconnected and explicable only by reference to the whole. What? I wonder who wrote that definition. If we were defining the word, I would simply say that it means a whole systems approach to anything. Living holistically means to me living in a way that the whole of who I am is expressed and experienced as I interact with the whole of everyone and everything else, rather than part of me interacting with the part of something or someone else, which is how I notice that I and most people most often live. Many of us have had fleeting moments when we had a felt sense of oneness with another person, or with every other person for that matter, and even every other thing. If you have had such a moment once or twice, you may recall it as a rapid passage through sheer bliss. The experience of oneness, as opposed to the conceptualization of oneness, is often an astonishment. The mind doesn't know exactly what to make of it or where to go with it, which is no doubt why it pulls us back into separateness as fast as it can. You have to understand the ego thinks our very existence is threatened when we experience oneness. All my life, I've wanted to know how to live as a whole person, which is the first step to experiencing oneness in all of life. I experienced myself in the past as being, in a sense, fractured. That is, part of me was going in one direction, and a part of me going in another. And a third part of me was trying to go both ways at once. I've felt torn many times in my life. This fractured sense of who I am is, I have no doubt, what caused me to live a life that until most recently was anything but smooth, anything but easy, anything but peaceful. Not that I was having a particularly terrible time of it, mind you, but my life certainly had more challenges, more disappointments, and more deeply unhappy moments than it needed to have. And I'm sorry to say, more moments in which I made other people deeply unhappy than I ever imagined it would. Yet, as I mentioned before, life is meant to be happy, and most of the time there really should be no reason for it to be otherwise. Certainly, there is no reason for life to be an experience of ongoing unhappiness. But when we are living as fractured people, trying to serve two masters and three agendas and four different thoughts that four different people have about who they think we are supposed to be, life can become very stressful and very unhappy indeed. So the invitation of life is to unfracture ourselves, to become whole once again. Terrific guidelines. We came into this physical experience as a whole and perfect being, but we have allowed life to pull us apart, and in some cases rip us apart. So now it's about returning to that place of original wholeness, and then coming from there in all of our interactions. I don't know about you, but I have needed guidelines, as I said a moment ago, to help me get to that place and to assist me in living from that place. So I was delighted when Conversations with God presented me with CWG core message number 19. The three core concepts of holistic living are honesty, awareness, and responsibility. Living according to these precepts and self-anger, live according to these precepts and self-anger will disappear from your life. I didn't even realize that self-anger was part of my life until I was about halfway through it. Somewhere between my 35th and 40th birthday, it became apparent to me that I was really not very happy with myself. And that, yes, I was actually angry with myself about many things. Hang on, I need to clear my throat. Mostly, I was angry with myself for being the person I was showing up as in the world. Not that I was such a terrible, awful, rotten human being, but I sure wasn't experienced by other people in the ways that I thought of myself. In fact, I held an idea about who I am that was wholly different from the experience that people around me reported that they were having of me. Nobody understands me, I would tell myself, and occasionally complain to a few friends. In fact, I may be the most misunderstood person I know. Now, none of this may sound familiar to you, or a lot of it may, but I can promise you that what I'm describing about my own experiences is not unique. So I began searching for guideposts, for suggestions, for insights into how I could literally pull myself together. And I have to be honest with you, I rejected most of what religious and philosophies and psychology was telling me because it all felt so simplistic. Then I encountered the Conversations with God experience, and what it said too felt simplistic, even in some cases unsophisticated and naive. But in this case, I decided to listen because the experience itself was so remarkable, so spiritually opening. So I allowed myself to take its messages in, to consider the possibility that there was more here than meets the eye, that what might appear on the surface to be very simple was, in fact, offering me an opportunity to look at life and to experience myself more deeply, more richly, and with more appreciation of the true complexity of what on the surface appeared to be simplistic. That's particularly true of the 19th core message of CWG Dialogues. On the surface of it, it seems to be so obvious and so simple, almost embarrassingly naive. Of course, honesty, awareness, and responsibility are important attributes in everyone's life. That's pretty easy to understand. But when I look beneath the apparent simplicity of the message, I saw and found more than I originally imagined was there. Let's look at these three core concepts one by one. Honesty. One thing I've discovered in my life is that it's not easy to be honest. I thought it was, but I was wrong. I've also observed that other people have apparently discovered the same thing. We've become fractured selves because we've learned to break ourselves apart into little bits and pieces. Some of those pieces are the truth about us in the many areas of our lives, and some of those pieces are the shields we put up to stop people from knowing the truth. Sometimes to stop ourselves from knowing the truth or having to admit it to ourselves. The irony of human experience is that many parents teach their children to tell the truth, explaining to them that honesty is a very important character trait, all the while modeling lack of honesty, not only in their direct dealings with their children, but in other areas of their life that their children can witness. Children hear their mother lie about having a previous social obligation to avoid going to a party she knows will be boring. They hear their father calling sick to work when in fact he's going to a baseball game. Thus, parents teach their children they should be dishonest in order to avoid disapproval or punishment or having to do something they don't want to do. It doesn't take children very long to get the picture. So honesty has become a real challenge for many people because we've learned that contrary to what we've been told, honesty doesn't always pay. Too often it doesn't pay. Too often it produces exactly the opposite result of that for which we hoped. So we learn to be dishonest. Hopefully, not about terribly important or really big things, but sometimes, yes, once in a while, even about those. The plan is not to be honest or dishonest, but to get through the moment. It's our survival instinct that kicks in. And it is that instinct that drives the engine of the human experience. Hang on, I have to cough.
You're muted, Linda.
I see that click didn't take. Okay. We learn to be honest if and when it helps us to survive, and to be dishonest for precisely the same reason. So there is more here than meets the eye with regard to this honesty thing. There is courage involved, and not a little bit of it. There is determination involved, and not a small amount. There is willingness involved, and not in minute measure. We have to be willing to take the flack that we most assuredly will receive if we decide to be honest about everything with everyone all the time. We have to be resolved to tell the truth no matter what. This requires jaw-setting resolve. We have to have the strength to endure whatever consequences may ensue from our determination and our willingness to be honest at all costs. In a couple of chapters, we'll be exploring this business of honesty in more depth as we look at the 5 levels of truth-telling. But for now, just know that if you think that this is a simplistic idea, a simple, almost naive instruction about how to live a holistic life, you are mistaken. It is anything but. So let's just be honest about it. Honesty isn't for sissies. It takes a very high level of commitment to one's own growth. I think I should stop here.
I was just going to say the same thing. So honesty. Going back to what you said, I think it was last week, could have been the week before, Linda. You know, is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it
Thoughtful, helpful.
thoughtful, helpful? I don't think that's being dishonest. I think that's being kind. You know, I'm not going to tell somebody, oh my God, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen you wear. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen, even if I think it is. And I
Now,
don't see,
question, Nanette, if they ask you directly outright, then do you tell the truth or not?
I would say it depends on who it is who's asking. Because psychologically, I go through, is this the kind of person that'll be hurt and it'll backfire, even if they've said that prior to? Or is this person, because I've told people that are really close to me, you know, do you like my new jacket? I'm like, I don't know.
Not my
Yeah, but I thought of that while you were reading, Linda, is I get the part where dad's calling in and he's really going to a baseball game. And that is teaching our children that it's okay to be dishonest. What are you guys' thoughts about
I think kids grow up learning hypocrisy. I mean, I think from day one, just about, because I think that most people are hypocritical and don't even realize that they're being hypocritical. You know, because that's, I mean, I remember it for myself. I thought everybody was just, I think it was, I was like 9 maybe. And my mother had taken me to she always would take me to, she didn't believe in church, but she thought it was important to subject me to it. So she'd take me to all these different churches. right? Depending on where we were living and what was nearby. And my takeaway was that people dressed up and got fancy on Sundays, and then pretty much went back to being normal, not so nice people the rest of the week. And it just struck me as just really hypocritical. And I think the examples he gives for things that kids observe they're great examples, but I think that you could come up with a million examples of the kinds of things that kids see in a household on a daily basis that represent a lack of honesty.
Right. But also, I want to say that I think we live in a society that kind of forces us to be liars sometimes. And by that, I mean, for instance, I need what I would call a mental health day from work. My current HR person said that she thinks that's a totally acceptable use of sick leave. This is the first job I've ever had where they would have said that. So, it's like sometimes in this life, I feel like we need a break and it's not built in for us to take one. And we might have to lie to do that. And that's just one example. I think we live in like you said, a society that teaches us to be hypocrites. We live in like a lying, deceitful society. It will be interesting to read what else he says about the being honest thing, because I've never felt like I should be 100% honest all the time if it was going to be hurting people. That's why I asked you, Nanette, does it make a difference if they ask for your opinion versus just out there pronouncing, what I think all the time? And I don't have a flat out, if somebody asked me, I would be honest and kind, basically. But if nobody's asking my opinion, then I can just keep my mouth shut and I don't feel like I have to state difficult truths.
Yeah, you don't have to bring it
Nobody's
up.
asking for them. You know what I mean? So
I remember one time somebody, I'm trying to remember what it was, they had something on that really, to my eye, and again, they're my eyes, to my eye, they didn't look so good. But they were ecstatically happy with whatever this piece of clothing was that they had gotten. And as I recall, what they said was, "Don't you love it?" And they were pirouetting or something, showing it to me. And the only thing that I could think to say in the moment was, what I love about it is how much joy it's bringing you.
yeah.
And they didn't push it so
Yeah.
that I didn't have to get to that place where, to my eye, it doesn't look so good on you, right? Like, because what it looks like to me really doesn't matter anyway. It's really, how are they feeling? How, and so I think a lot of times when people ask us, what do you think? The appropriate response is, it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is what you think and how you feel, and if you're loving it, then that's what matters. You're loving it.
People don't always want to hear that answer. I'm thinking about a conversation I had with a friend who, it wasn't about clothes. It was sort of a serial monogamous with religions. So he was originally Greek Orthodox, then he converted to Islam, and I was as supportive as I could be, even though he was gay and I kind of didn't get it. And then he told me he was going to convert to Orthodox Judaism, and I was not supportive, because at least convert to a religion that accepts you for being gay. And then later on, when he told me he had converted, he at least it wasn't Orthodox, it was a more modern version, but he wanted my approval. And I'm like, that's not my job, you don't need me to approve. You do you, and that's you, and that's great, and I love you. But he kept pushing, and it's like, no, I don't particularly approve. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. He wanted my approval though. So anyhow, yeah, that.
Yeah, it can be a real awkward moment. But Linda, I think that is one of the best. That's an excellent point, is turning it around and saying, you look so happy in that dress. You're just glowing, whatever. Because you're telling the truth. If they're ecstatic about it, it's not my place to say, take that rag off. You just, I thought that was very good advice, Linda.
I think the real problem with honesty is that we've lost it as a collective. We've lost the honesty of who and what we are. And so pretty much every day, all of us are living a lie because we're basically all asleep.
Yeah.
And so I think that it really is key. Truth and transparency, honesty are really the key to healing the world.
And we're wearing masks because we don't believe that we'll be accepted as who we really are in the world.
Right.
That's the biggest lie. The biggest lie, and that's what you're saying, is we're all going around, not all of us, there are some of us who are awake and living as ourselves and saying, hey, this is who I am, and not hiding. I hid for a long time. I don't hide anymore. But like most people, we're hiding huge parts of ourselves and trying to only show the teeny tiny bit that we think the world will accept.
Right.
This is a great conversation, and I don't know about you, but I wouldn't mind starting the next session to give Ariana and Dima and Rhea a chance to respond to this. But it is after 1, and I hope you're not late to your meeting, Linda. Okay. Bye, Linda.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. And Mary, do you want to do a real quick closing?
Sure. I think for me, the most important question to ask myself before I give anybody feedback is what would love do? What would love say here? What is a truth that love can tell, right? And that kind of is the way I guide my life right now, as much as I can, just trying to be the love that I want to see in the world. And so that's who I try to be in my interactions with other humans on planet Earth and with other life forms as much as possible, just be the divine enactment of love in this, the holisticness of it all. If it's all one big, organism, I almost said orgasm, one big organism, let's try to treat all parts of this organism with love. You, me, and everyone else.
And I'm glad you cleared that up. Oh, I'm sorry.
I love levity is good for the soul.
Yep.
I see this an organism.
See, I told you we like to laugh.
Yeah.
All right, I love you all. And next week, Easter's coming up, but I don't know if that affects anybody. It's not for a couple weeks, I don't think.
Mhm. Yeah, Easter is the 17th.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of weeks here.
Excuse me.
But we can decide then. And I also got to call Kirsten Palmer and find out where she is. So I already wrote to Ann Derby, and so we'll see what's going on.
Yeah.
We will have in this time, like today.
No, not today. Yeah. Is that what you meant?
Yes, in this time will be.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody. Love you. And we'll see you next week.
See you then.
Love you all.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.